Well, welcome everybody. This is day 3 of Igniting the Next Generation as we are gearing up in this busy week. We've had a great week so far, and we've got many of the day 3 presenters. This is Canadian Day because everybody that's on the screen right now is either from Canada or has an immediate family member from Canada. So, and I didn't even know that until we talked about it. And we're all wearing black in honor of Jeff. We coordinated each other all day and made sure that we were all wearing the same exact outfits. So, because Jeff only has black. If you know anything about him, he doesn't wear anything but black. So, but welcome to day 3. Let's go around and introduce ourselves and jump right into this as we recap. So, Jeff, you want to start us off?
Yeah, you bet. Thank you. This has been a fun week. We've had 2 great days and recaps, and third one, I'm looking forward to this. I'm Jeff Hagee. I'm one of the founders and hosts of Igniting the Next Generation, along with James and Tammy. So excited to be here and excited for this to be the day I got to present. And so I love being with my fellow Canadians.
All right, someone else jump in for us.
I guess I can go. My name is Kwesi, and I'm in the Toronto, Canada area. And I used to be a police officer. Now I'm a youth speaker. And I just love speaking to students about mental health, resilience, and just building their hope and confidence. So I'm happy to be here too.
I can go. So I'm Saul Malik. I live in Nashville, Tennessee. And I cover a very niche topic in my speaking. I talk about gambling and gambling addiction, citing my own story as a young person going through online sports betting addiction now in long-term recovery. And so I've really been active in a lot of high schools recently as this issue becomes more prominent globally.
I guess there's nobody else except for me to introduce, I guess, at this point. So, my name's Justin. I'm obviously a public speaker. I'm a pleasure to see everybody today. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. So, I'm going to introduce a little bit of who I am and what I do. So, I've been coming over to these lives for the last couple of days, but today was the day I actually got to present with all of these wonderful speakers. I even got a chance to talk to these, to watch these guys speaking, and I really have lots of questions. But who am I? So, I'm originally from Gatineau, Quebec, which is like the French part of Canada. But I moved to Ottawa, which is the capital of Canada. And basically what I do here is that I teach conflict resolution and resilience tools to show kids how to stand up to bullying. So basically it's a practical approach to try to address the bullying problem that persists in the world, especially in youth. So my focus is middle school, high school students, and also teachers and educators. So anyway, I talked about this today. Thank you for giving me the mic.
All right, well, let's get started on talking about these particular topics. Jeff, why don't you roll us out?
You bet. Thanks. So if you watched our live last night, I've got kind of the same message that James started with. Is I had what I was going to speak on already and spoke on something completely different. So what I ended up speaking on was empowering our youth to own their own journey. And the other person that started this summit with us was Tammy Matheny. Tammy and I have a book that we wrote called Challenge Deep, Athletes Rising Above Adversity. Well, recently we started a podcast to go along with that because we had so many stories in that book that were great, but Tammy was like, you know what? We have a lot more stories that aren't in the book. So we started doing that. And our first 2 episodes of that podcast, one was with my nephew, Tanner McLaughlin, who's the tight end for the Cincinnati Bengals. And the second one was with Josh Frost, who is a world champion bull rider. I am from the rodeo world, so it was fun to get him involved. But in those
Weren't
2...
you a clown, though? You were a clown, right?
No, that's what I am now.
Trying to get it.
I was a steer wrestler. But anyways, what came out of those 2, both of them, without being, led into it, talked about the importance of setting huge goals. Tanner talked about setting, why limit yourself? Why not set your goals to be beyond what anyone thinks you can accomplish. You know, kid from Southern Alberta, you'd never think he's going to be in the NFL, but he set his goal really high. Josh Frost, same thing, from a small town in Utah, and he talked about setting those goals beyond. And he talked about, you know, a lot of people as they become a professional rodeo cowboy, they have that big goal of, I want to make it to the national finals rodeo. That is an incredible goal, but his was never that. His was, I want to be a world champion. And that was what his focus was. And so that's kind of what got me on the topic of doing what I spoke on, was creating those unrealistic goals, if you will, and, you know, really going after them, and talked about some of the things that you can do to really chase those goals, and the importance of your mindset and all the routines and all the things that come into play with that. So it was a topic that I really love speaking about.
What questions or comments do you guys have on Jeff's thing? What are the things that I liked about yours? And one of the quotes that we put up on your page was where you said that small, consistent habits performed every day are going to help you create those big results. And I will say that you're probably one of the most disciplined people I know about the habits, at least from the exposure I've had. I mean, you have a very good early morning routine that you do. I mean, you are 2 hours most of the year, 2 hours behind me. Sometimes 3 hours behind me in time zones, and you are up most days before I am. And and I'm like, what is going on with this crazy guy? Why is he getting up? You know, it's still dark everywhere in the world. The Western Hemisphere is all dark, and he's up. What's he doing? But you have those habits. So I've always admired that.
Well, one of the things, and stealing the phrase from Darren Hardy, bookending your days, it's you can't always control how your day goes, but you can control how you start your day and how you end your day. And so that's why, you know, one of my giveaways, if you watch the video, is my mindset questions. And that's something I developed with my mindset journal as well. And that's part of my morning routine, because all they are is some simple questions, and it goes along with what you talked about, James. The very first mindset question is, what are you grateful for today? And it's just some questions to kind of prime you for the day. And I think, you know, with the morning routines, the evening routines, accountability, you know, what you mentioned there too, James, is what I really like to work with people on. And I talked about this was, when you're setting your goals, reverse engineer it and take that big goal and break it down into small chunks until you've got it down to your daily accountability. What's the small thing you can do today that by the end of the week, you'll achieve your weekly goals? And if you achieve all your weekly goals, you're going to hit that monthly goal. And those monthly goals add up to that big goal, because that big goal might seem so unrealistic, but when you take it all the way down to daily activity, it can really make a difference. And that's something too. I talk about our 4-week win challenge, that people can jump in that and go through the whole creating routines and accountability and stuff. And it's powerful.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, I was just posting on LinkedIn the other day about talking to some students at a school in the Investment and Entrepreneurship Club. And a young man spoke up and said, you know, we have all these guest speakers who are these entrepreneurs, and they're all, you know, successful and all this. And the common theme that he noted was that all of these people were consistent and hardworking. And so it really spat in the face of what I brought up of the instant gratification from the gambling world, and what you're describing too, these consistent goals and these consistent efforts that are required. It's demanded in order to make any long-term change. It's not just an overnight success story. So I think it's good to hear that from outside my own journey at some of these schools, to hear that in other disciplines and things. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a real good fit. You know, I do what James says. I get up at 4. Is that a requirement of success? Heck no. But that's what I do. What's required is that consistency, those routines, those success habits that are going to make you do the right things. That doesn't matter if you get up at 4 or you get up at 10, if you're doing the right things.
Sure. All about that consistency. It's a good message.
That definitely works as well. Like with your the thing, like it's not a new method, but by any means, but the method of like looking like a year from now and looking at that person that you aspire to be and what that person looks like. And from that point, you backtrack, you look backwards and what it required to get there and building those steps. Like, even if you don't have grandiose goals, I think that's a very powerful message and something that like isn't repeated enough. So even if it's something that's forgotten, it's always a good thing to be repeated, because like, you know, this life is a little bit harsh and that's reality. Like, it's like the world is about like you accomplishing things in this like reality that are crazy goals and stuff like that. But part of that is also recognizing there's a part of it that's reality that you have to fix, and those habits at like checking off stuff from your bucket list, your weekly goals. That's like the reality of the situation. Of course, we have that like ideal in a year from now, I'm gonna look like this and I'm gonna be really amazing, and that motivates us. But like that backtrack is definitely the reality that it takes with that mixture. It's just the perfect mixture to me. The idealistic and the like realist. And for me, that's a really powerful message that always needs to be repeated. Anyway, I love that when you like mentioned it. Just want that.
Thank you. I think, and I didn't go into it a lot, one of the most powerful parts of the whole process is knowing your why. What is your true purpose for doing it? And we've got a process we go through that really digs deeper to find your deeper why, you know, on an emotional level, which that's because you're not going to always want to do those things. But when you've got a strong enough why, that's going to push you through to do what's needed.
So what is your why, if I may ask?
And you know what? I write it out every morning. My why is to live a life of abundant choice. And that means a lot of different things to me.
What would you say to someone who doesn't really have that big goal, right? I know that sometimes you say, okay, you set a big goal and then you have to do the steps and work your way backwards. What if someone's like, you know what, I don't really have any major big goal right now? What would you say to that person?
I would love to talk with them about that. And because there's so many different areas of our lives, right? We've got our, you know, our financial goals, our relationship goals, our spiritual goals, all the different things. And that's where I love what he was just talking about, creating that vivid vision of, you know, if this was the best year of your life, if everything went how you wanted, what does it look like a year from now? Mm-hmm. And then saying, okay, if that's what would be the perfect year, what did that mean financially? What did that mean with your relationships? What did that mean spiritually? And let's create a goal around that and then start reverse engineering that. And it doesn't, you know, I talked about Tanner and Josh, and that goal doesn't have to be, I'm going to be a world champion, I'm going to be in the NFL. It can be a lot less than that. But, you know, I had someone that I worked with a few years ago, called me a while ago, and she says, you know, every year now I write my vivid vision. And she says, let me read you my vivid vision that I wrote at the beginning of the year. And as she went through it, it was some big things. And then she told me how much of it she was living now. And it was amazing. It was so cool that she had created that vision that was a stretch for her. And she was living so much of it. It was really cool.
I like Kwesi's question because it got me thinking with how many assemblies are out there for youth to be the best version of themselves and be major successes. What's stopping a young person from saying, I just want to work a stable job at a grocery store and be able to pay for my apartment? And, you know, that's not something that I guess is any sort of grandiose dream or anything, but even that could be achieved and could be something that is a measured success.
Absolutely. But you know what? And goals are often like the horizon. They're always moving, right? And that's why when I see in my mindset journal, one of the things I write out my why statement and my top goals every morning. And when people use that, I tell them, you know, go back every month. What were your goals a month ago, 6 months ago? Because so often as we progress, we start pushing those goals out, making them bigger, and don't even realize we're living the life that was a goal 6 months ago.
Any other comments? Well, my next thing that I want to learn about is I want to learn about how to become unbreakable. So, who can share with us about becoming unbreakable?
It's funny. Guess that's me, right? My tagline. You know, and it's kids always ask me that when I speak at the assemblies because they say, "Oh, are you unbreakable? Are you unbreakable?" And I'm not wearing the shirt today because I want to match all of y'all with just plain black. But the words on the shirt itself, I have a couple that I'm actually giving away tomorrow at an assembly. They're actually broken letters, so they're not solid letters that spell the word. They're broken because that is what we are, right? We are people who get broken at times. And how do you pick yourself back up? That's the lesson I teach, not how to be impervious to everything, but you are going to get broken. What do you do after those things happen? And so that's my whole mission, to let young people know that these are the things that there are things that are going to happen to you. What are some of the tools you can use to restore your mental health, to build your resilience back, to build your confidence back when those things happen? So I kind of consider myself a partial motivational speaker because I'm not just up here. I'm like, okay, these are all the things that are going to happen to you. Let's focus on how we deal with them, right? So that's the approach I take in my speeches, in my workshops. And I like the one-on-ones. And the reason why I like being in a group like this is because I don't speak about all the topics you all speak about. But when I learn from you and a student comes up to me after a presentation and they ask a question about gambling or about, living their why, I can say, okay, you know what? These are some of the things I've picked up from other speakers, so I can give them knowledge that's borrowed, for lack of a better word, from you all. So thank you for that.
Mm. Well, I mean, I think that goes to the quote that I pulled out on yours. The second half of what you said is, sometimes in life you win and sometimes in life you learn. And I love that. It echoes what John Maxwell said. Sometimes you win. Let's see.
I think he has a book by that title, actually.
Yeah, he does. And it's over on my shelf. And now I can't remember the title of it.
Yeah.
It'll come to me later. He's not on the summit, so we won't pump his book. So,
Yeah.
But I love that. I love the concept of becoming unbreakable, of building up the resilience, confidence, and breaking the limits that they need to have, because this is a generation that lacks some of that resiliency. And there's lots of theories about why. A lot of it is technology. A lot of it is life situations. A lot of it is parenting styles that have changed. There's so many different theories. All of them have some validity on it, but whether or not we know the real reason, we see the results of it, and there is a lack of that. So it's an important topic. Anyone else?
Yeah.
I was going to ask Kwesi, do you know what I've heard, the greatest gift from the 12-step program? I go to the meetings. You know what they say the greatest gift is of the 12 steps? Do you know?
Oh, of the 12 steps, like AA, you mean? Or?
Yeah. Do you know what I've been told the greatest gift is from the 12 steps?
No, I don't know.
Oh, they say it's the ability to cope with life. And so I'm right along with you that it's not about a perfect life, but one that a person is able to cope with. So I think it's great that young people are hearing that, and not, I used to be turned off from speakers because I thought, it's just like, everything's going to be great all the time and all this. But I prefer that realistic approach because it's not always going to be great.
Yeah. And I like to start my speech for that specific reason, that they do hear, much too much positivity without the realistic side of it. I think more speakers are actually now bringing both sides to it. To be fair, when I'm out there, I'm like, okay, yeah, we're getting the message, right? But within the first 5 minutes of my speech that I give to students, they hear that my dad cheated on my mom raised me on her own. She taught me that things happen. It's not your reality, it's your response. They find out I used to be a police officer. I was charged with a crime I didn't commit, and I unfortunately was incarcerated for something I didn't do. So you're going to find out that all in the first 5 minutes. So there's no way that you're going to think I'm coming in to sugarcoat a message for you. Yes, I give a lot of funny stories and I get them laughing and engaged and all that. But I get right to it so they understand that, this isn't just someone who's coming out saying life is always good. Here's what I've been through, and here's what you can go through. And I think that resonates. So that's how I start my speech.
You're definitely like, now that you're actually adding to what your like past was, because like I watched your video and like I didn't hear about this like cheating and stuff like that. I was hearing about the story with the like you opening the box and it's a medical school kit, and then you're like, oh, it's not what I wanted, and then it's actually the Game Boy, and I was like,
Yeah.
like this like fun in like, and now you're talking about like these like real stories. I'm like, wow, that actually adds a lot of depth to what you're saying. Because like when I was watching your video, one of the things that really caught me off guard is the amount of vulnerability you put in at one point, especially with the Barb story.
Yeah.
Like for those who haven't like watched the video, it basically he was talking about like how he had this job at the government that he wanted to apply to get a permanent position, and went to this interview with this lady that like they didn't vibe, it didn't work, and because of that he lost the opportunity to like get this job. And years later he got this win story where he became a cop, and he wanted to go and tell this Barb lady, right? Like, hey, look at what I got my badge. And he goes up, and then his old boss says like, hey, and then Kwesi comes up and he says, hey, where's Pam? And the other one was like, he moved on. And that stung. You know what? I felt that so deep in my core, because you were actually able to be vulnerable, which made me like believe that you actually changed. And like you're like, this is a valid, like all the lessons that came afterwards, like were from a place where you were hurt and you needed to adapt. And that's sort of like, you're talking about this unbreakable thing. The real reality is you're breakable until you rebuild after it. And you definitely played that very well. Anyway,
thank you. You can give my keynote now. That's funny because that story is not in my student keynote anymore. Maybe I should work it back in. It's in my, I have a staff presentation that I do for teachers, and it's in that one. But yeah, I couldn't have told it better myself. Thank you for rehashing that story. But I think most of our lessons we learn in life, we learn through negative emotions, right? So I was embarrassed. Like I remember driving back to Keelan 401 in Toronto and going into that office all proud, like walking in Conor McGregor style, right? And I was and so and she wasn't there. So these things stick with you, right?
Oh yeah, it definitely gives you a hard lesson of humility and how much that helps.
Yeah. I just want to add one thing to what James has said earlier, that this generation isn't as resilient. I like to think of them a little bit differently. Like back in the 70s, so the way you drove a car or rolled down a window was very simple. You stick the key in the ignition, you turn it, you go, you roll down the window like this, as I do in my parent presentations. It always gets a good laugh because they know what I'm talking about. And there was one way to do everything. Now you get into a car, and sometimes I'll rent a car when I'm out speaking, and I'm like, how do I start this car? Okay, I got the key. I put it over here. I got to press this button. Okay, I got to press the brake at the same time as this button. And then the window is on the side with like 16 other knobs. And so there's so many different ways to do the same thing. And I think that's what young people are running into. We didn't have social media telling us that we were inferior and inadequate every single day, every moment. We had all these things that we didn't have to deal with. So they're trying to drive a new car, and we were trying to drive the old car. So what I'm learning is that they're just dealing with way more, trying to do the same things that we did. And so it's not that they're less resilient, they just have so much more to figure out to be resilient. And so I think they're just as strong as we are. They just have so much more to deal with. And
I think that's why we see, and you mentioned it a while ago, how speakers have changed the way they present a message. It's that each generation, each time period, because of the culture around them and their factors around them, they need different messages. They need different things. We didn't have really real speakers, that were focusing on, hey, the hardness of life. They were always, when I was coming through, they were always talking about the aspirational things, the positive things, the uplifting things. Well, this was the 80s and early 90s. I mean, that was the time when everything was positive and uplifting. Everything was going. So that was the messages going. So as things have changed, we responded to it differently, but they still have those same core problems that they're going with. Hey, we had somebody jump in, a new guest. You jumping in and saying, hey. So, hey, Brittany, how are you doing?
Hey, y'all. I just got back from a couple of different things running around, and I was like, I got to jump on the meeting. So just wanted to jump on and say hey and hope everybody's vibing and thriving. And I jumped in at an interesting time with the question of resilience, because I also agree. I think that life is just different. So I'm curious. I had a follow-up question as to that, and I'm curious your guys' thoughts on this. How do you believe that the different in parenting styles have attributed to the resilience of young people today?
The difference in parenting styles?
Yes.
I think parenting styles, and Jeff, you may attribute toss this in as well, is we tend to go in a pendulum swing. Parenting tends to overcorrect too much. They see whatever the issue is that happened from a previous generation's parenting styles. Maybe they didn't hug enough or love enough or affirm enough, and then we go to the other direction, and then we get kids and then we're looking at it and saying, okay, with this generation, they think everything's a winner, everything's in, so let's swing back the other way. There tends to be a pendulum swing, and it's really not parents really their fault as much as it is culture reacting to these things. And that's just the way things happens in politics. It happens in, sport, everything. We overcorrect. When we see a problem, we overcorrect. We don't know how, without a lot of people pouring into you, you just don't know how to deal with those types of things. So,
no, I hear you. I agree. I love the pendulum, analogy. That's really good. Because I know we talked about this last time, the anxious generation, this book, and he does talk about how, at least with the data he looks at, since for 2010 to 2015, the parenting style was very much like, we want to fix all of the problems for our kids, and we overcoddle them, and we don't let them fall and fail. On top of the fact that they're correlated with screens, we've seen this lack of resilience and stuff. So but I see the pendulum swing, right? Because these parents are my age or a little bit older, and they're like, oh, I want my kids' lives to be much easier than mine was, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the pendulum swing. So, but like you said, I don't think it's anybody's fault. And that's what I tell parents. I'm like, it's not your fault. Everyone's just trying to do the best that they can. So yeah, I was just curious as to your insights on, the parenting style, but
it becomes a parent's fault when they realize the issue and they don't adjust.
Yes, they don't course correct. Yep. No, I agree.
Yeah, if they don't course correct and they don't know what's going on, then that's when they're, because we've gone from the helicopter parent, the parent that's always hovering over everything, to the lawnmower parent, the parent that's trying to cut everything down to make the path easier, to the snowplow parent, the parent that's, hey, we're not just going to cut the obstacles down to make it easier for them to go over. We're going to remove the whole things out of their way so they don't have any obstacles. And we see those types of things, and then we're getting now into free range parenting, which is okay, let them go, let them do what they want to, and
You forgot ostrich
back.
parenting as well.
Do what?
You forgot ostrich parenting. I speak K to 12, so I speak to every grade. And when I go to elementary schools, I'm seeing a lot of principals saying the parents just drop their kids off at school and say, you fix them. And if they get calls, they say, well, I brought them to school so that you could help them.
Yeah.
And so it's head in the sand ostrich parenting. Ooh. So that's another parent that I would add that I'm seeing out there far too much.
But what they really need, and I've seen this term in a lot of the parenting coach circles, is lighthouse parenting. Someone that's showing them the way, that shows them the direction, that can show them the rocks, the waves, the things, the obstacles in their way, but it's not guiding them. It's not really, it's showing them what's there, but it's not driving the boat for them. It's not steering it. It's not removing the rocks. It's just saying, listen to me. I've been there. This is what you're going to encounter. These are some ways to do it, but you got to be held responsible for that. So,
wow, it's like what we do. We're lighthouses. I love it.
Everybody with their colorful-
James, you gotta have the book. You have to book the 5 types of parents or something like that. I see.
Yeah, I
your
was
book.
actually writing this down as we were talking. I was like, oh, the ostrich. That was a new one. I hadn't heard that one. So I gotta,
Yeah.
You got to get off, don't you? I hate to say.
Yeah,
Any last comments as you go?
I got 5 more minutes, so I'm just gonna hang out and then I will quietly make my way out. But it's been a blast. Thank you so much for having me.
Anyone else want to comment on his presentation or before we move on? All right.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for having me, everyone. And I'm sure I'm going to see you out in the speaking field. And hopefully, Brittany, will see you south of the border pretty soon. All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Hey, Brittany, we're breaking the black shirt streak. Just,
Oh my
Yeah.
god! Is everybody here wearing a black shirt? I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
The irony is like I am wearing a black shirt.
That's
Oh, it's
awesome.
so funny. It's icing out right now though, so I had to throw a sweater on. So, but I'm wearing black underneath. So,
Justin, why don't you take the ball next?
all right. So basically, my speech or my presentation today talked about the beauty of expressing yourself the correct way. So if you didn't notice, I was trying to be in theme with the boys and also Mademoiselle, but it's also a little reference to what I did. So this is a ramen bowl, which was a big part of my presentation today. And I'm gonna explain a little bit the brain, the like processing behind it. So back in the day when I was like studying about my keynote, we were trying to figure out ways to make basically an experience live for kids. Because you know what? Teens and stuff like that might not have lived all the experiences that us adults have in our stories. So one of the ways that I wanted to communicate in my keynote was to literally make them live an experience. Because you know what? They could like remember a story, but you know what? They are going to have a memory once they experience my keynote. So back then I was doing lots of research. I was searching through books like the Digital Madness, the like so many other books. I have them all over there. I'm not gonna list them all because I'm not trying to do any marketing. Anyway, moral of the story is that I was trying to find a universal concept that everybody could understand because of this guy called Frederick Imbo, who made a reference about self-value with a $20 bill. I was like, that's so smart. That's like everybody can relate to what money is. So I was like, I want to find something that like every kid and every person can relate to. And I was trying to brainstorm this thing and I couldn't figure it out. But I did know through the book Digital Madness that blame and victimization is one thing that we have a lot in kids today. And because I'm a bullying speaker, I think it has a very big portion in like communicating and how we actually interact with each other. So blame was definitely at the high point of my list. And I was like, you know what? I got to figure out something here. So what is something that everybody experiences? I was like, I can't think of anything except for money. Why can't they do this? And then for some reason, like back then, also, I had recently gotten a heart operation. So I was like couch locked and I couldn't do any working out. So I started watching this anime called Naruto, and he was eating a ramen bowl. Anyway, I got really addicted to ramen and kept eating it like 3-4 times a week, ruining my money stack like nonstop. And anyways, I burnt myself with it. And I was like, everybody lives pain. That's something. You know what? And then me and Josh, we were thinking, because Josh is my business partner. And we were like, oh, what if I burned myself? Like I just take sips and I just blame this food. Because you know what? Like if we blame people for problems, we're not actually addressing anything. So we just thought about it as like, let's make them experience this thing through humor. Because also humor is also very memorable. It makes you more memorable. So we're like, all right, let's make people live this. And then we actually do this in the keynote speech that we do. I call out Josh and I'm like, I am hungry. Can you bring this? And he brings me the bowl of ramen. I burn myself on stage. But I don't really burn myself. But anyway, moral of the story, the backbone of it is that we want to teach kids to not blame problems and start owning a little bit their situations and taking control over their own lives. And when you do that, you actually have to learn how to express yourself. It's the logical step after is that if you stop blaming, then there's got to be something else. If I'm not blaming, then what am I doing? And that's expressing yourself kindly and properly. And we used a little bit of like knowledge from psychological like approaches, from theories that are well backed. And that's basically our idea. We wanted to reduce the amount of blame so that when people do have conflicts with their boys, it doesn't get worse. And that's basically my long story, but we're all speakers, so I could talk forever,
I loved your presentation. I love how you were talking to them about taking responsibility for the actions, emphasizing using words over physical, and owning their problems. That is what I really loved. We need the comment that you say you got to own your problems if you're going to be able to be successful in this, because blaming others and victimizing others is not going to do anything, but owning it. That's a lesson that I wish I had learned, because I very early on my early high school career, I didn't own any problem that came to me. It was always someone else's fault. And it was only when a teacher grabbed a hold of me and just kind of jerked me around and said, hey, dude, you're kind of being a loser here with the way you're acting, that it kind of clicked with me. I need to man up and try to.
Yeah, and also with like the generation that we have today, like we're noticing more and more, like especially with social media, that keeps on driving these like extreme perspectives on social media, because we know the algorithm is favored with like extreme polarizing things with like comments and stuff like that, which doesn't allow for something called binary thinking, for spectrum thinking. So you get binary, which means you're either good or bad. There's nothing in between. So this blame thing is sort of what you find a lot on, and it's sort of also one of the reasons why we have such division with politics today that seems to be getting worse. So I thought it was like a really good idea to talk about this blame thing, because it's a problem that are lived in the people today. Even I catch myself like doing this stuff, but I always have to remind myself, like everybody here, right? We're learning these lessons where just keep on going. But owning your problems is definitely the better way. When I have a ramen bowl, if I want to eat it and it's too hot, I got to blow on it. I got to do something. I got to wait for it to cool down. I got to do something. And that's the reality, is that we have to act in a way if we want to address problems. And anyway, sorry, I can own on all this stuff.
Jeff, do you want to say something before you head out, or?
No, I got it obligated. I'm sticking around.
Okay, well, I just got your message again that you were here, so sorry. Anyone want to comment or add to this?
Dang, I must be talking pretty solid if nobody got no questions.
I think I interrupted everybody's train of thought there, trying to.
No, I mean, I think it made sense to me, the metaphor there. I mean, I can relate to that, being a student at one point of getting in trouble. I remember making a song up about a kid at lunch. It was inappropriate and getting in trouble. And then my first thought was, well, everyone else laughed and they said encore and told me to keep going, and not taking ownership of that, and led to a lot of discipline and some issues. So that fact that you're catching that at an early stage, I think, is definitely valuable. So I'm glad to hear it.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah.
He's a heart.
I don't know how to do signs that well. Yeah.
I've practiced so much. I'm not even gonna front.
I'm afraid I would try to do something and it'll come up as being something offensive, so I'm not going to try that.
Anyway, the blame analogy is a really good one, but you know what? My keynotes I actually speak about other tools. The like blame analogy is just one of the little parts. Like you guys don't see this, but it's like this little part on a board over here. But anyway, it's not even the main thing. We got a lot of colorful stuff. So anyway, just wanted to mention that quickly because we are on a live stream. I am hireable.
Shameless plug.
You know, that's something to add for those that are watching the live. If you're not part of the summit yet, you can still join at ignitenextgen.com, and under everyone's presentation, there's the links how to connect with them, follow them, and you can see other videos and whatnot.
Yep, you can see if they got a book to sell. There's a book on there that or at least one of their books will be on there, because we had several that have many books. And if they have podcasts that they are a part of, that link will be on there as well. So you can go to their site and find out about that. And those sites will be open for quite some time. I mean, they're going to be permanent. So you'll be able to catch those much later.
Also, if you're a student, feel free to come to my Instagram and chat with me. I love chatting with y'all. I can't wait to hear more of you guys' stories.
Saul, I sent your presentation out to a couple people today, just
thanks.
because of the timeliness of it. Because of, as you and I had a conversation before we started this live stream, you're talking about your experiences and was interviewed on your experiences with gambling. And this is the gambling week in the United States, maybe worldwide. So share with us a little bit about your presentation and where we went from there.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, first of all, for sending it along. I had some Wix visitors on my page today, so maybe that was courtesy of you. But my experience, my presentations are centered around my experience as a young person. I'm 27 in long-term recovery from gambling addiction. It started for me as a sophomore in college. So 2017, I was introduced to sports betting from a friend online. And what I tell the students is how it started, about the little $10 baseball bet in September of 2017. And I make sure to clarify that first win was like my big win. People talk about gamblers, compulsive gamblers having an early big win, and you think, oh, thousands of dollars. But for me, it was that little $10 because it was what it did for me in my mind. I felt like a big shot. I felt like I was in control. And essentially, my presentation is a cautionary one of the potential consequences of gambling behavior. But I'd say at a deeper level, it's more applicable to the average student. And usually I'm at high schools talking about finding something that I took ownership of. It really became my identity to gamble. I thought that it gave me an in social circles, and then abusing that and pushing it past its proper boundaries and really getting into some deep trouble. So, I'm not the anti-gambling guy. I'm like more of the gambling awareness and education person, because I think that well-informed students who feel that they have options are on a better track than students who get lectured to and told what to do. But I will say one last thing, James. I think that I tried to cover a whole variety of things within the gambling world, talking about, of course, the online sports betting, and that's usually more males are participating, but there are other students participating as well. But also talking about things like games that have gambling elements and cryptocurrency, and how about misuse of the stock market. So it's important to get the full picture, because as adults, investing in the stock market is part of a normal relationship to finances. So to give that full picture and not just paint the evils of it, I think is the best way to go about it.
I teach a family class at my church, and a class about how to do family. And I was sharing with them about the summit, and I was going through some of the presentations and stuff. And I said, hey, we got a guy who's talking about online gambling here. And as soon as I said that, someone in the audience, someone in our class said, hey, you know what's even worse than that? She says, my son is a junior in college. He says everybody on his floor is really into doing some low-level day trading. Mm-hmm. And I was like, do they even know enough to know what they're doing? And a guy who is in there who is a day trader and does very well on it. I mean, is a business for him. He was like, no, they do not. He says, they're destroying themselves because they don't know.
Well, I worked as a waiter at a restaurant back in college, and one of the waiters I worked with on his Instagram page was always Mr. Forex and how he was trading and posting these fancy cars and stuff. And then, you'd see the guy at work and he'd be the one bumming you for, $10 to get a ride to the grocery store or whatever. So a lot of the stuff you see online is just a facade, and it plays into the get rich quick and the hustler mentality. And so there's a large social media aspect to it as well. So I think at first when I started the speaking, some places were kind of turned off by, well, gambling is so niche. It's just very specific, but it intersects with all these different other topics that schools are looking for. And so I've tried to stress that point when I kind of do a little bit of a pitch with prospective schools.
Well, I think it too, so why your topic is so timely, and you're a pioneer on sharing this to high schools and college, is because it's so easily accessible now versus just 10 years ago. Just 10 years ago, it wasn't as easily accessible. 20 years ago, you had to go somewhere to sports bet. You had to physically go somewhere, or you could call. I guess you could do that. But, and beyond that, it was relegated to a certain demographic. And the only people who were betting would be like if you did a pool or something, or if you did the NCAA, picking the tournament pool, that kind of stuff. That would be about the extent of it. Because I remember my dorm floor in college, when you had NCAA time, you had everybody put in $1 or $2 or something, and somebody won it. But that was it. There was nothing else going on. So it's a very topic.
Say one more thing, and I'll let everyone else chime in too. But part of what's so alarming to me about the current gambling world is that it's almost really like celebrated to be sick with the compulsion of gambling. And I alluded to it before we went live about posting this clip from Dr. Phil, where I talked to him about betting on Ugandan women's basketball. And I posted it as a way to bring about awareness to the absurd sports that people are betting on. And instead of getting comments like, yes, this is an issue on Instagram, I got hundreds of people trying to one-up one another about the crazy things that they've bet on. So the way it's been marketed, it's like a badge of honor to consider oneself like a degenerate gambler. And so the sickness has become part of the appeal, which is real tough because that's so embedded in the culture.
Any comments or thoughts?
Oh. Yeah, like the fact that you say that, like, I can think about it because like the stock market itself is not the worst thing in the world. But I think about all these people that celebrate the ridiculous, unrealistic gains of like, hey, I got 4 times what I put in, rather than like the 10% appreciation if you put in like the S&P 500. I know I'm using big like finance words. Doesn't matter. There's like some things in these systems that are just wrongly done, and it's in these like extreme behaviors, especially with like what we were mentioning a bit earlier. I'm thinking about like social media and like these like radicalized posts that like make sure that it's at the top of the algorithm. I go on like Reddit and I can see like these guys, oh, I did 10x on this, I did 10 times this, I did that, and like it's appealing because you think, oh, because this person got this, I can do that too, and it keeps on like feeding itself. So like what you're talking about, like I think it's very underrated as a topic because like it is really normalized. And in these systems that like shouldn't naturally be, like reasonable behavior is now out of this control, and people don't like really address it. It feels to me like it's not really addressed, possibly because it's your own choice. You choose to gamble. You choose to make these choices, right? So we like, well, it's on you. It's your fault. You betted on this like stupid thing. When you go wrong, nobody supports you. But when you are winning, everybody celebrates you. Ironic, no. Anyway, I loved your topic. I really liked you talking about it. Can you like go a little bit more in depth about like what you teach, especially like around the cryptocurrency stuff? Because I could see these like things like Trump coin that like went crazy up, and then the president like had this like thing, and then the money got come out, and a lot of people got like stealing money, and like just like what are these topics about crypto?
Yeah, I mean, when I mentioned crypto, I put it in the context of what you're talking about, of how it gives off this deceptive appeal as a stable investment, but then you have things that are like these meme coins where, they jump up because one person is controlling the entire market share, and then that person is able to remove essentially all of the ownership of that crypto, and it tanks the value. So, I mean, I've brought up some things just in current culture, like, the Hawk Tuah girl. And I know it's kind of a crude person to reference, but she had this cryptocurrency and she essentially rug pulled it, like pulled it out, and people lost all this money on it. And it was like, a big deal in the news. So talking about the volatility of it and how it just seems like it's so easily manipulated is how really I try to address it. And I think it's important for me to stay up to date on what's going on and not just sharing my own story as important as my story is, but saying, take a look at what's going on around you every day. Like this umpire who got fired for having this betting account with a friend, and he wasn't gambling, but even still it affected his career. So there are real consequences to it.
Wow.
And people overlook as well just the high rate of suicide associated with gambling addiction.
Mm-hmm.
So people think, you just lose a few bucks, it's no real big deal, it's not like a drug, but really it is. So it's an important one.
Well, we have one more for the day that we have for it, and that's Kate Garnes. Kate Garnes' presentation was Even Crazy Dreams Come True. And energy, excitement, enthusiasm is what you're going to get when you watch hers. That she can bring it. It just comes through the screen. Those of you who've been on our podcast know that one of my habits is that I'll take a little pre-workout before I do a podcast because I want to bring the energy. And she is one of two people that I felt like I didn't drink enough of the pre-energy. I was like, her and Aaron from last winter summit was I didn't bring enough with Aaron because I was like, oh my gosh, she is like way ahead of me on energy and that stuff. So one of the quotes that I have for her that I love, it's not your job to lower your standards that you have set for yourself and in your life because someone else is too afraid to raise their own. And she really talks about the importance of having big dreams, outrageous dreams, and these dreams that can give us motivation and excitement and strive for better things. I think it's just a lesson to learn because so many times youth are afraid of having these big dreams because they're afraid of failing. But, it's like I saw a clip today on something where somebody was talking about running, setting the record, the 100-mile marathon record. He wanted to do it in like 11 hours. And I started doing that in my mind. And I was like, that's just insane. And he was like, but if I reach for the stars, even if I don't reach it, I've gotten farther than most people. And that just kind of coincided when I was listening to her. So if you saw Kate's today, any comments on hers or any thoughts on hers? Or if you know Kate, anything you want to share on that?
One of the things that she said that I liked, well, a couple things. One is, we're allowed to change our mind on things. We can have goals, we can do things, and we can change our mind and go a different direction. And then the other thing that really stood out to me that I think is important to look at is not everyone in your circle is in your corner. When she talked about that, I thought it was pretty on point.
Yeah, that was really a beautiful point that she brought out. Like very unexpectedly listened. Like she really good at moving because I had no idea when I started listening to her her video. I was like, where is she going? Like up and down and all around. But when she got to the end, it kind of all loops into make sense. She definitely got that that very much embodies the exact message of when you pursue goals, it's not just one lesson. It is all of these side tracks that you go around the way. When you go and pursue your real goal, you realize what you need to shed. That's part of it, right? And when you go and chase your aspirations, people are gonna be against your aspirations. That is hard. I remembered one of my stories as soon as she came when I was I was serving, and I had this one guy when I was serving and telling them, hey, I'm gonna be a motivational speaker, and the guy was like, don't you need to have done something to do that? Bro, you can have something done to you and become one. You can do anything. This and I was just oh, I can't believe. And when I was listening to her story, I was like, that is so exactly it. You can change these paths, and it's so beautiful. Anyway, I love her message. just building upon Jeff there. Anyway, does anybody else have some comments?
And I want to say this though, every time now I look at old clips of people from probably about 5 or 6, well, just a few years back of going to Disney World and they're interacting with Minnie Mouse, I'm wondering, is that Kate underneath that? Is that her? That is going there and stuff. Any other comments on this?
This is
I do want to ask Saul real quickly. How in the world did you how did Phil maneuver his way into your video? I mean, did he just feel like, look, I'm not on this one officially. I was on the last two. I want to be on this one, and he kind of snuck in.
Oh, Phil, like that Phil, not Dr. Phil. Okay. No, Phil
Phil,
got
the
into my
chemistry guy,
video.
not Doc.
Yeah, no. Phil got into my video because he suggested that it just might be a cool format to have it as an interview and kind of give people a little more context that way. So I thought, the format sounded good. It made sense to me. And I like Phil a lot. He's a great guy. He has such good energy. So I thought if it was fine with you, it seemed like there was no pushback. So
I didn't care. I just thought it was funny when I saw Phil on the video when I was looking at it. I was like, the guy just cannot stay away from us.
We just know in every summit he's gonna pop up in someone's video.
Yep.
It's like, where's
like
Waldo?
an Easter egg. Yeah.
I love it. That's so great.
Waldo. Yeah, unlike Waldo, he is easy to pick out in the crowd, though. Yeah. Any comments or any they on day 3? All right, to wrap it up, day 4 is tomorrow, and day 4 are a lot of friends of Tammy, and they're all really it all has a sports, athletic, those who are in that realm theme. Now, if you're not in the sports and stuff, you're still going to glean a lot from the information on goal setting, on being the underdog, on overcoming obstacles in your life. There's some great content on it, but it did kind of work together that their messages kind of worked out to be the same. Tammy's talking about embracing the underdog mentality. Chase is going to talk about boosting your confidence and vision with the E3 workout plan that he talks about. Andrew's talking about winning within, 3 decisions to build a resilient athlete. Kirsten is really talking about becoming an empowered, and if you look at her title, you'll notice that it says athlete and then it's marked through and leader, and that's intentional. You need to go and watch it so that you can see what exactly she's talking about there as it going through. And then the other Kate, there's 2 Kates in this summit, is really talking about how to shatter those limiting beliefs and achieve what's impossible. So we got a big day tomorrow, big day. Again, you can sign up for it. We encourage everyone to continue to sign up for it. We've had a lot of people who have signed up over the last few days. We want to keep this momentum going as well. So any closing comments?
Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for having us on here. Well, I'll speak for myself. Thanks for having me on here.
Well, thank you guys for being here, and thank you, audience, for hanging with us. And for some reason or another, the comments that you're sending me, I can see them online, but they're not showing up on this platform. So it's not like the last 2 summits that we've been able to show the comments as people have been doing them. But we do appreciate the people who are saying different things to us and saying hello and good job and all that kind of stuff. So we appreciate your time. And we'll see everybody again tomorrow night.
All right.